Hello everyone, True Zero Emissions here. I'm going to see if I can share with you how to build a zero emissions fuel system, which means the engine will not, no unburned fuel will leave the engine. Right now, unburned fuel leaves the engine and burns up in the catalytic converter. That's what the catalytic converter does. It burns up the unburned fuel. Imagine burning more of the fuel or all of the fuel in the combustion chamber. Okay, almost near perfect combustion, right? Stoichiometric, equal balance, complete burn. So imagine having a hot plate. I'm simplifying all this. You can refine this to any degree you wish. This is an experimental concept. Imagine having a hot plate and spraying with like a high pressure, like a fuel injector, onto that hot plate. What temperature is the hot plate going to be at? Now, last time I checked on the internet, it said auto ignition temperature of fuel is between 400 and 500 degrees, or just over 500 degrees. I found out that if you bring up the temperature of the hot plate to around 800 degrees Fahrenheit, what we want to do is find out where the fuel auto ignites when you spray high pressure fuel at a hot plate, right? Now, obviously, this is a thought experiment. And if you actually do this experiment, you have to be extremely careful, have fire extinguishers nearby. People get really hurt with gasoline every day, just filling their cars up or working with gasoline in various different ways. You have to be very careful. But this is a thought experiment, and it's been done before. A retired NASA project scientist shared this with the public. and I'm just sharing this with you as I've learned about it. So if we take the fuel and flash vaporize it at a very high temperature, right? So the fuel's ambient temperature, and then it hits a hot plate that is, let's say, around 800 degrees Fahrenheit. My recollection of where the auto ignition temperature of gasoline is that when the iron, if you're using iron or metal, if it starts glowing red, that's too hot. So just before that, I would say 100 to 200 degrees below the auto ignition temperature of gasoline, and I mean the tested auto ignition temperature, not what the internet says, because this is a different kind of experiment, right? I don't know what the internet's talking about when it says auto ignition temperature. I'm not sure what they mean by that. I know that in testing, I've personally tested fuel, and there's additives in fuel, and fuels, different gas stations might have different temperatures, but a couple hundred degrees, I would say like 100 degrees or between 1 and 200 degrees below where it auto ignites. That way there's a safe range there. But when you flash vaporize that fuel on a hot surface, right? When the ambient temperature fuel hits that hot surface, what comes off of there, what happens is, as the person that shared this originally shared the idea, said that the gasoline combines with oxygen in the atmosphere. It combines with it, which is called stoichiometry, equal balanced and complete combustion, right? So when that white smoke, which no longer smells like fuel, it's very strange. It's like, you can call it like a mystery fuel, right? This white vapor, when you run the engine off it, it reads double horsepower. So this is good for people that like power. The engine no longer is hot. You could touch the exhaust system with your hand. So imagine this. What we know about engines is when we run the systems, these engines have direct injection, right? In other words, the fuel injectors shoot the fuel directly into the combustion chambers. But look how these engines are wasting 60% of the energy to heat. 40% is used to move the vehicle. So if we can use some of that energy, some more of that energy, there's 60% energy available there. How much of that energy do you think we're using with this kind of fuel system I'm talking about? It sounds like we're using a significantly greater thermal efficiency. It sounds like we're allowing the engine to operate at a greater thermal efficiency, right? So the great thing is we don't have to set the air to fuel ratio. Like if we read about engines, just regular engines run at, like, I think it's is it 14.7 parts air to 1 part fuel? I think it's 14.7 to 1 air to fuel ratio. I've read about test engines that are testing at like 2,000 parts air to 1 part fuel, which is really lean, right? I had a Honda Insight that was running very lean at 24 parts air to 1 part fuel, if I recall correctly. That was a 2000 Honda Insight. Now, the air to fuel ratio is predetermined when you flash vaporize the fuel because it's combining with air on a molecular level and it's burning perfectly in the combustion chamber. What I really like about the system is it's almost like a pre-combustion. It's like a pre-combustion vapor chamber. That's what I think of words-wise, like words. And you can read about those words as they relate to many patents and many ideas out there. But this idea is so simple. It's literally just having a hot plate, and you can make a box. People have made boxes, an air inlet where the air comes into the box, and then it goes. Then there's an output that goes to the engine. I imagine if I ran this engine on that system, it would make all the engine light and everything come on because it wouldn't know what to do with what I'm doing, right? It's like, what's going on? So, but what we'd know is that the engine should run cool. The exhaust system should stay cool to the touch or warm to the touch, not getting hot. I like that because that indicates to me that we're possibly using some greater thermal efficiency, right? Because these engines are heat engines. You could read that. The Department of Energy? I don't remember who did the report on this. I think it was Department of Energy. There's been reports done on the engine. These are called heat engines. They get really hot. And they run at an extremely low efficiency. Even that's all internal combustion engines. Even the Prius gasoline engine, no matter what the engine is, if it runs on gasoline, and even if it has fuel injection, which is supposed to be a more precise way of burning the fuel, right? It's still not vaporizing the fuel, and it's definitely not flash vaporizing the fuel in atmospheric pressure, right? It's in a chamber, in a combustion chamber where the pistons are moving up and down really fast. All I know is this pre-combustion vapor chamber that I'm talking about that lets us combine a fine mist of high pressure, which is important, that pressure of hitting the hot plate really hard. I think that's important. And the finer the droplet size, the better, right? So fuel injector is perfect. I think a fuel injector is like between 5 and 7 microns, if I recall correctly. You have to double check that. But anyway, whatever the fuel injector is, it's ideal for this kind of test, right? So maybe buy some fuel injectors, use the plugs that come on them, run that into a circuit. I know some people that have tested this have said they've used like an Arduino, I think it's called Arduino circuits, where you can write your own program and then make those fuel injectors fire at a rate you like, that's preferable to you. Anyway, this idea, what it would allow? It would allow us to increase the efficiency of the engine and reduce the emissions from the exhaust. And I think it's a really good idea. And I'll keep making videos talking about this because I think it's a really good idea. And as far as patents go, I'm pretty sure people have been patenting this idea and variations of it for the past maybe 50 years. Who knows if it's been the past 100 years? I don't know how long. But I would request that automakers implement this fuel system into their vehicles because it's a zero emissions fuel system that seems to use more of increase the thermal efficiency of the internal combustion engine. When people say, oh, new engines burn all the fuel, we're not talking about burning all the fuel because the exhaust system helps with that, right? So if you call the catalytic converter part of the engine, you could say the engine's burning up all the fuel. We're not talking about how much of the fuel are we burning up. We're talking about how much of the fuel energy and how much of the energy and fuel is being used to move the automobile, okay? That's really important. It's an important distinction. It's not about just burning up fuel. It's about maximizing thermal efficiency, or how much energy can we use in the fuel to move the automobile, okay? That's what I'm talking about. And I'm not talking about studying this for another 100 years, several hundred years, or several thousand years. I'm talking about right now implementing some variation or version of a flash vaporization fuel system where 100% of the fuel before it enters the engine is flash vaporized at an extremely high temperature, but below the auto ignition temperature. So I'm going to say between 700 degrees and 900 degrees, somewhere in there, and possibly as low as 600 degrees up to 900. But you have to test that, and again, each gas station could have different, slightly different temperatures. But when I tested it, I think I was using Shell. I tested it with Shell and Chevron fuel and 76 fuel, and I was using about between 600 and 800 degrees Fahrenheit when I tested it. And yes, it didn't smell like fuel anymore. When you flash vaporize it, it doesn't smell like fuel anymore. But the engine runs really strong. And anyone that wants to test this on the dynamometer can. It should have double the horsepower, so it should have double the power, and the engine should run cool and not get hot, including the exhaust system and including the catalytic converter. Imagine the catalytic converter not even getting hot. That's because there would be nothing for the catalytic converter and the exhaust system to react with, because the fuel would already be all burned up. Isn't that wonderful? So how do we maximize the thermal efficiency of the internal combustion engine? Okay, everyone, have a great day, and there'll be many more videos to come. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.